they keep saying that the Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare. There is no evidence of that whatsoever. But Joe Biden keeps saying it no matter what, because Joe Biden is a liar. And he knows about the big line. He knows that his base has, well, a problem with the truth. They will follow him wherever he goes, like the Pied Piper. Well, Mr. Producer found quite a fantastic YouTube about Joe Biden and Social Security and Medicare. Joe Biden is running around telling a big lie to the American people. He thinks it'll get him reelected, and that is that Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare. The Republicans have bent over backwards to say no, they don't. But it doesn't matter to Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a pathological, serial, psycho liar. That's what he is. And the other day he said that inflation's under control and food prices are coming down. Inflation's not under control. The numbers just came out. And food prices are soaring. They're soaring. If you take food, clothing, and shelter out of the inflation issue, it's kind of flat. But most people can't live without food, clothing, and shelter. So it's ridiculous to take those elements out of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. In any event, I want you to remind you about this. We're going to do this often. On March 16, 2020, in one of the debates that Biden was in, that Bernie Sanders kept reminding him about his position on Social Security and Medicare. And what's interesting is we have access to this. You know, all the major networks have access to this. And yet, they don't play it. They don't show it. Well, why is that? You know why. They're corrupt. Go.
Let me ask you a question, Joe.
Yeah.
You're right here with me.
Yeah.
Have you been on the floor of the Senate? You were in the Senate for a few years.
Yeah.
Time and time again, talking about the necessity, with pride, about cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting veterans programs.
No.
You never said that.
No.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
Look, here's the deal.
You're an honest guy. Why don't you just tell the truth here? We all make mistakes.
I am telling the truth.
And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time.
Joe, let me repeat it again. I want you just to be straight with the American people. I am saying that you have been on the floor of the Senate time and time again talking about the need to cut Social Security, Medicare, and veterans programs. Is that true or is that not true?
No, it's not true.
That is not true?
That is not true.
I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
Everything was on the table. I did not support any of those cuts in Social Security or in veterans benefits.
Whoa. Everything was on the table. All right, you're right. You just said it, including, in your judgment, cuts to Social Security and veterans.
In order to get the kinds of changes we need on other things related.
Joe, then
but we did not cut it.
I know, because people like me helped stop that. All that I would say to the American people, go to YouTube. It's all over the place. Joe said it many, many times, and I'm surprised. You know, you can defend that or change your mind on it, but you can't deny the reality.
Well, the little commie's right about that one. Joe Biden very proudly said that on the floor of the United States Senate. He got up. This is 1995, and that's what he said. Now, Rick Scott put together a proposal to review programs every 5 years, to sunset programs. And so they've jumped all over him to say that that means that he wants to cut Social Security and Medicare and so forth. Rick Scott says, that's not what I mean. Joe Biden's proposal was way more aggressive. He wanted to do it every 4 years. And he was very explicit about Social Security, Medicare, and veterans benefits. And so they keep saying that the Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare. There is no evidence of that whatsoever. But Joe Biden keeps saying it no matter what, because Joe Biden is a liar. And he knows about the big line. He knows that his base has, well, a problem with the truth. They will follow him wherever he goes, like the Pied Piper. But you just saw it and you just heard it. Now, I want to do this one more time to make it abundantly clear. So when people you know, whether in your family or friends or even strangers, tell you about Social Security and Medicare, you can remind them of what Joe Biden said in 1995 as Bernie Sanders reminded them. And what bothers me about this is Mitch McConnell doesn't cite this. Mitch McConnell attacks Rick Scott because he wants to take Rick Scott out, even though he's a fellow Republican, because Rick Scott dared to challenge him for the leadership in the Senate among the Republicans. So Mitch McConnell, in many ways, is very evil, very conniving. He's always power hungry. And his dear friend Joe Biden, both of whom have something in common. Their families have been enriched by the communist Chinese government. McConnell talks about Biden as his friend, but Rick Scott, a Republican, is an enemy because Rick Scott dared to challenge him. Okay, well, you heard from Bernie Sanders. You saw what took place in that debate in 2020. You want to see the real deal? You want to see what took place on the floor of the Senate in 1995 when Plugs Biden was newly cornrowed in his forehead as he put the new hair plugs on his forehead? Here we go. Watch. Go.
We have before us the balanced budget amendment, about which many of us have expressed serious reservations, the effects of which are, in both the short and the long term, cannot be predicted with any degree of certainty. We'll hear a good deal of hyperbole on this amendment, promises by those that this is going to cure all, and promises by those, if it passes, that we're going to go to hell in a handbasket and rapidly, and all our liberties will be taken from us. I hope we kind of keep our eye on the ball here and at least have an open mind to the prospect that we can make this amendment better and still have an amendment. I'm sure someone has looked out over the next 15 years and concluded if we stay on the track, even the one predicted by the President of the United States, that we will be providing for an increasingly larger share of every tax dollar just to go to reduce interest on the debt. And to me, that's the driving force behind this amendment. When I introduced the budget freeze years ago, the liberals in my party said, it's an awful thing you're doing, Joe. You are all the programs we care about, you're freezing them. Money for the blind, the disabled, education, and so on. And my argument then is the one I make now, which is the strongest, most compelling reason to be for this amendment or an amendment, and that is that if we don't do that, all the things I care most about are going to be gone. I mean, whatever happened to that old conservative discipline about paying for what you spend? I'm up for re-election this year, and I'm going to remind everybody what I did at home, which is going to cost me politically. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government. And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time. Somebody has to tell me in here how we're going to do this hard work without dealing with any of those sacred cows.
Wow, he sounds like a real fiscal conservative there. And yet, as President of the United States, he's been the most reckless spender in American history. The debt, the deficit, just massive. Deficit applies to the yearly increase. The debt applies to the accumulation of all these increases over the years. And Joe Biden is the king of the debt, king of the annual deficit. And now he's running around saying the Republicans want to destroy everything. They want to shut down the government because the Republicans don't want to pay for what they're spending. That is, the Democrats are spending. And now when it comes to Social Security, he says the Republicans want to cut spending on Social Security and Medicare. When it was Joe Biden who proposed that, it's not a long time ago, 1995. I mean, it's not yesterday, but he wasn't 12 years old at the time or plagiarizing in law school. So I just want to point that out. And he proudly said it, as Sanders said. Okay, great. Now, Social Security and Medicare must be reformed. If they're not, they will disappear. I didn't say that because I'm against Social Security and Medicare as a principle. I said it because the trustees of Social Security and the trustees of Medicare have said so. Why? Because the federal government, that is, these politicians, stole all the money out of the trust funds. Now they are being funded by general tax revenue. And even there, it's not going to make it. So the trust funds are now filled with IOUs to pay back you, the taxpayer, in the general tax pool. So effectively, they've created Ponzi schemes. So all that money you pay every week, every 2 weeks, every month from your paycheck, it's not going into a Social Security trust fund. It's going to pay IOUs where you owe the general treasury, where we all owe the general treasury. So they put debt on top of debt. That's how a country goes broke. The biggest problem we have now is interest. Interest on the debt in the next year, 2 or 3 most, is going to reach $1 trillion a year. That comes straight out of this budget. That comes straight out of your taxes. $1 trillion a year interest on the debt. Why? Because the debt is not only the on-budget debt that they show you. If you have an entitlement, if you have a pension in the private sector, those companies have to account for the years out. They have to anticipate how long you're going to live, what it's going to cost the company, and so forth. And that is part of the accounting procedures for any company, any business. And the Securities and Exchange Commission looks at that. Investment houses look at that. They want to see both short-term immediate deficits and long-term debt. When you hear about the debt of the United States is $31.5 trillion, they're excluding Social Security and Medicare. Now you might say, well, why is there a debt in Social Security and Medicare? For the reason I just told you. They took all the money out of the trust funds, the way they took all the money out of the highway trust fund. We don't have any trust funds in this federal government because we're Ponzi scheme politicians. So what is the true debt of the United States? The last good number I heard from a top economist from Boston University, and he's a liberal, who testified several years ago, was $200 trillion. When you play out Social Security and Medicare and veterans benefits and all the rest, not 31.5, but 200 trillion. That had to be 5 or 6 years ago, so it's got to be 40 or 50 trillion dollars more than that. And so what are we going to do about this? So if we don't reform Social Security, do you know what happens automatically? And I think it's 13 years or 11 years. The payroll tax is going to increase from 12.5% to 25%. 25%. And the benefits are going to be slashed by 30%. So people are saying now, well, let's deal with this. And the way to deal with it is to grandfather in the people who are on Social Security, to grandfather the people who are going to be on Social Security in 5 to 10 years, and then to address it, gradually address it, the benefits as well as the payroll taxes. Nobody wants to do it, except Rick Scott. Medicare is expected to go broke sooner than Social Security, 10 years or so. That's according to the trustees. So what do you do about it? Bernie Sanders has an idea. Everybody should be on Medicare. Well, of course, that'll kill it in about 18 months.
Want to see more? Sign up for Levin TV.